My name is Iris Archer. I'm 33 years old, and 2 weeks ago, my mother showed up on my front porch for the first time in 9 years. She was wearing a beige cardigan, carrying a small suitcase, and holding a folded sheet of paper in her hand. I remember every detail because for a second, standing there with the door half open, I actually let myself think maybe she had come to say the words I had waited nearly a decade to hear. She hadn't. What she brought me wasn't an apology. It was a handwritten list in blue ink, 5 bullet points. Every line ended in a dollar amount. When I added it up later, the total was $925,000. She didn't ask how I'd been. She didn't ask about my children, the grandchildren she had never met. She didn't say she was sorry for disappearing from my life. She looked me straight in the face and said, "We need to talk about the family's future." What she didn't know was that I had a list too. Mine was 9 years long. Every birthday card that came back unopened, every voicemail that was ignored, every screenshot, every returned photo, every message my sister sent about me when she thought I'd never see it. 29 items in all dated, all labeled, all filed in a navy blue binder that had been sitting in the bottom drawer of my desk for years. She came with a list of what she wanted. I came with a record of what she had done. And if you've ever had someone disappear when you needed them most, only to come back the second your life looked valuable, then you'll understand exactly why I opened that binder. But to understand that morning, I have to take you back. I grew up in Millfield, Ohio, a tiny town where everybody knew everybody, and privacy was more of a theory than a reality. One church, one diner, one barbershop, one main road, and a whole lot of opinions. My father, Kenneth, worked at the lumber yard for 3 decades. He was a quiet man, the kind who came home at the same time every evening, took off the same boots by the same door, and said very little unless he had to. My mother, Diane, ran our house the way some people run campaigns, efficiently, precisely. She organized church events, neighborhood meals, school fundraisers. She always knew who was bringing what casserole and who had said what to whom before anyone else did. My younger sister, Paige, was her favorite without anybody ever saying it out loud. Paige was loud where I was quiet, social where I was reserved, effortlessly adored in a way I never was. She was the kind of girl who won homecoming queen and somehow still managed to act surprised about it. I was the dependable one, the one who got straight A's, washed dishes without being asked, and understood very early that in our house, attention was something you earned and affection was never distributed evenly. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I'm saying it because it matters. In my family, love always felt like something that had to be budgeted, and my sister was the expense my mother never hesitated to approve. At 18, I left Millfield on a full scholarship to Ohio State. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and for a while, my mother acted proud of that. She packed my suitcase, slipped a card inside, and wrote, "Come home soon. You belong here." I kept that card for years. It still exists, tucked away beside everything else. It turned out to be the last truly kind thing she ever wrote to me. I met Marcus Ellison in an advanced statistics class. He sat a couple rows ahead of me and solved problems like he was casually reading the weather. Calm, focused, almost impossible to rattle. He was studying engineering and minoring in computer science. I was headed toward finance. We started talking after class, then studying together, then finding reasons to stay in the same room longer than necessary. He wasn't flashy. That was part of what I loved about him. He listened carefully. He thought before he spoke. He treated everything I said like it mattered. On our first date, we ate from a taco truck near campus and split a drink because neither of us had much money. We sat there until the truck closed, talking about the kind of future people only talk about when they are young enough to believe building it is still possible. Marcus wanted to create something useful, something that solved a real problem. I wanted work where numbers weren't just numbers, where they actually meant something. We understood each other early. We dated for 3 years before he proposed, and when he did, it wasn't some grand public scene. It was a Tuesday evening at our kitchen table in our tiny apartment. He looked at me and said he wanted to build a life with me. I said yes before he finished asking. That night I called home. My mother answered, listened, and went silent for 7 full seconds. I counted because that kind of silence tells you more than words ever can. When she finally spoke, she didn't congratulate me. She didn't ask about the ring or the date or whether I was happy. She said, "You need to think carefully about what this means for this family." 2 days later, my sister texted me that Mom had been crying ever since I called. Not long after that, the letter came. Handwritten, cream stationery, 4 paragraphs. The last one said that if I married Marcus, I was choosing him over my family, that they would not support it, they would not attend, and if I walked down that aisle, I shouldn't expect to walk back through their door. Then came the line I never forgot. "He is not one of us. He never will be." That was the moment everything changed. I kept the letter. I didn't know then how important that would become. I just knew something in me wanted proof. Something in me understood that memory gets argued with, rewritten, softened. Paper doesn't. Marcus and I got married anyway. We had a courthouse wedding in June with a handful of friends, no aisle, no church, no family from my side at all. His mother, Cora, flew in and brought pound cake in a plastic container and fixed the flower on my dress with more tenderness than my own mother had shown me in years. She held my hands and said, "Welcome to the family, baby." That sentence still lives in me. My dress was from a consignment shop. Marcus wore a clearance suit. Afterward, we all went to a Thai restaurant and pushed tables together and laughed until someone spilled water. It was small and imperfect and absolutely real. A week later, I mailed my parents a wedding photo with a note telling them we were happy and hoping someday they could be happy for us too. It came back, stamped return to sender. That was item 2. That was the day the binder really began, even if it wasn't a binder yet. In the first year after our wedding, I called my mother 4 times. She never answered. I left careful messages every time, the kind you leave when you're trying not to sound hurt, even though you are. I sent birthday cards, Christmas cards, updates. They all came back. My father sent one text message in all that time. "Your mother needs time." That was it. My sister posted smiling family photos online with captions about Sunday dinner and my people, and I was nowhere in them. Nobody invited me. Nobody mentioned me. Eventually, I started printing the screenshots, saving the call logs, keeping the envelopes. At first, it was instinct. Then it became routine. Date it, label it, file it, not out of revenge, out of self-preservation. By the second year, Marcus had quit his job to build software for small businesses that were drowning in compliance headaches. He saw a problem no one glamorous wanted to solve. I saw the financial model behind it. He built the engine. I built the numbers around it. We spent nights in the garage beside a cheap whiteboard and 2 mismatched monitors, eating leftovers and trying to turn an idea into a company. That company became Compliance Core. And while we were building that, I was still sending cards home. Still getting them back. Then came the twins. Liam and Sophie arrived on a gray November morning, 6 pounds each, and changed my life so completely that for a little while I forgot to be sad. Marcus cried the first time he held them. Cora flew in the next day and stayed 2 weeks. She cooked, cleaned, rocked babies at 3 a.m., hummed softly in the kitchen, and loved those children with her whole heart from the very beginning. I sent my mother ultrasound photos while I was pregnant. They came back. I sent birth announcements. They came back. I sent pictures of Liam asleep on Marcus's chest and Sophie wrapped around my finger. They came back too. Those were items 13, 14, and 15. Around that time, a mutual friend forwarded me a text from Paige. It said, "Her kids don't have real grandparents." That's what she chose. I remember sitting in the nursery reading that while one baby slept and the other breathed against my shoulder, and all I could think was that my children absolutely did have a real grandparent. Her name was Cora. She showed up. She stayed. She loved them in ways no one could ever fake. That's when I understood something important. Family is not biology. Family is behavior. Over the next few years, life got fuller. Compliance Core grew. We moved from the garage to an office, then to a bigger one. We hired people. I worked my finance job by day and helped run company numbers at night until eventually I joined full-time. Marcus handled product. I handled projections, contracts, cash flow, the kind of details that quietly decide whether dreams survive. We bought a house. The kids started school. We built a life that was ordinary in all the best ways. And from Ohio, there was silence. Not complete silence, though. Every now and then there would be a photo online, a wedding I wasn't invited to, a holiday dinner I didn't know about, a caption about my whole world that excluded me so completely it almost became absurd. Each time, if there was evidence, I filed it. One year, I sent my sister a wedding gift and a kind note despite everything. The package came back unopened, item 17. By then, I wasn't crying over these things anymore. Some grief burns hot at first, then cools into something sharper and more useful. Documentation, clarity, a refusal to let anyone later claim they didn't remember it that way. Then our company started getting attention, not overnight, not because of luck, and definitely not because of some flashy miracle. We built slowly, carefully, honestly. A funding round here, a press mention there, a piece in TechCrunch, a local business article, a growing valuation. The kind of thing people in our industry noticed long before the outside world did. And that, apparently, was when my mother started paying attention again. A friend from back home texted me after one of our funding announcements and said my mother had been asking questions at church. What did Series B mean? How big was the company? Was Marcus still running it? Then came the whispers that she was suddenly speaking about Marcus differently, saying she had always known he was smart, as though history had been edited while I wasn't looking, as though 9 years of rejection could be replaced with a cleaner story now that success made it convenient. I didn't file hearsay, but I remembered it. Then came the screenshots that changed everything. A friend of mine in Ohio got added by accident to a family group chat and sat there unnoticed for 3 days. Before they removed her, she took screenshots and sent them to me. I read them in a soccer field parking lot while my son ran drills in the distance. My sister had been tracking our funding. My mother was asking how to approach me. They discussed mortgage payoff, retirement, medical bills, college money for Paige's son, monthly support. One message said, "Make a list. She's a numbers person. She'll respond to numbers." Another said, "She has more money than this entire town. She can afford to help her family." That was item 26. And just like that, every loose thread tied itself together. The LinkedIn profile views from Millfield, the sudden interest, the rehearsed pride, the questions. They weren't reaching out because they loved me. They were circling because the math had changed. I called a family attorney after that, not because I wanted a lawsuit, but because I wanted certainty. Could they touch our assets? Could they make claims on the kids? Could they use family ties to insert themselves legally after 9 years of absence? No. Our trusts were secure. Our legal structure was clean. In Oregon, grandparents with no established relationship had no leverage here. 9 years of documented estrangement made that even clearer. So legally, I was safe. Emotionally, I was getting ready. When our company began the IPO process, life became a blur of bankers, filings, projections, lawyers, roadshow language, and too little sleep. Marcus and I worked harder than we had ever worked. And when Compliance Corps finally went public, we stood in New York and watched the numbers climb on a screen so large it didn't feel real. By market close, our paper net worth was $44 million. It felt absurd. It also felt dangerous because I knew exactly what would come next. The missed calls started almost immediately. Ohio numbers. My father. My mother. Messages. My father left a voicemail saying he was proud of me, that he had always been proud of me, that my mother wanted to talk. I listened to it more than once. Not because I believed it uncritically, but because part of me had waited my whole life to hear those words. And yet, even then, I couldn't ignore the timing. Not when he had stayed quiet through the wedding, through the babies, through the years of returned cards. Pride had apparently found its voice only when there were millions attached. A few days later, my mother sent a carefully written text about family, the future, the children, and what families should share. It contained not one apology. So I screenshotted it and filed it, item 29, the first message from my mother in 9 years, and it still managed to ask for access before offering remorse. After that, my sister suddenly wanted to meet for coffee while she was in Portland for work. I agreed, mostly because I wanted to see what honesty looked like when filtered through her. She arrived polished and warm and intensely curious. Over coffee, she asked question after question about our house, our neighborhood, the kids' school, Marcus's role, the company size, recent funding, lifestyle, assets. 32 questions in all. I counted. The one thing she never asked was the only thing that mattered. She never said she was sorry. She never said she missed me. She never asked what 9 years of silence had done to me. When we got up to leave, I noticed in the cafe window reflection that she had angled her phone toward the parking lot to photograph my car. That became item 28, reconnaissance visit, no apology offered, vehicle documented. 2 weeks later, my mother arrived, back to the porch, beige cardigan, small suitcase, folded paper. I let her in, but not into the living room. I took her to the kitchen. Kitchens are for truth. Kitchens are where my children do homework, where my husband makes pancakes, where Cora's picture hangs on the fridge beside school artwork and grocery lists and real life. If this conversation was going to happen, it was going to happen there. She sat down and unfolded her paper. Then she read it to me like an invoice. $500,000 for retirement, $200,000 for my sister's son's college, $45,000 for my father's surgery, $180,000 for the mortgage, monthly support after that. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "This is what family does." I looked at that page, then stood up, walked to my office, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and took out the navy blue binder. When I came back and set it beside her list, she looked confused. "What is that?" she asked. I told her, "You brought your list. I brought mine." Then I opened it. I showed her the returned birthday cards, the wedding photo she sent back, the Christmas cards, the voicemail transcripts, the screenshots, the text from my father telling me she needed time, the post where my sister called my children grandparentless by my own choice, the group chat where they strategized about how to make me pay. I laid it out one piece at a time, the way I would walk a board through an audit. No screaming, no dramatic speech, just facts, date, item, evidence, pattern. At first she cried, but it was the kind of crying I knew from childhood, the controlled kind that asked for sympathy without admitting fault. Then, when I read aloud the group chat messages, the tears dried up and anger took their place. She said I had no right to read those messages. I told her she had no right to send back photos of my children. That was the moment something in the room shifted. Then I showed her the envelope that had been opened and resealed, the one containing a photo of Liam and Sophie. I told her I believed my father had opened it and wanted to keep it. For a second, just a second, something honest appeared in her face. Fear, regret, the terrible realization of wasted years. She admitted she had been afraid that if she let any of us back in, she would have to admit she had been wrong. And then, just as quickly, the honesty vanished. Pride returned. Blame returned. The old story returned. So I ended it. I put her one-page list beside my 9-year binder and said what needed to be said. I told her I would not give her money. Not because I couldn't, because if I did, she would get to rewrite what happened. She would get to pretend those 9 years were a misunderstanding, not a decision. She would get to turn calculated silence into family reconciliation with a payout attached. I told her if she ever wanted a relationship with my children, it would not begin with a check. It would begin with an apology, one she actually meant, and not to me first, but to the grandchildren she chose not to know. Then Marcus came home, walked into the kitchen, took one look at the table, the binder, my face, and simply sat down beside me with his hand on my shoulder. That was all. No performance, no speech. Just loyalty. And I think my mother understood in that moment what she had failed to understand for nearly a decade. I had not been left with nothing when she cut me off. I had built something better, a husband who stayed, children who were loved, a mother-in-law who showed up, a life rooted in truth instead of control. My mother picked up her suitcase and left. 2 weeks later, my father called and apologized, a real apology this time, late, incomplete, but real. He said he should have opened the door years ago. He said he should have called. He said he wanted to know his grandchildren and that he knew he didn't deserve easy forgiveness. I told him we could start small. Phone calls, no money, no instant absolution, just consistency if he could manage it. My sister texted once after that, "You could have just helped." I never answered, because no, I couldn't have just helped. Not at that price. Not with history erased and accountability missing and love suddenly arriving disguised as an invoice. The binder is still in my desk drawer. 29 items, 9 years. I haven't added a 30th. Maybe I never will. What those years taught me is this: family is not defined by blood or tradition or a shared last name. Family is who shows up when your life is still small. It's who sits beside you in a cold garage while you build something uncertain. It's who flies in every 6 weeks to hold your babies and fill your freezer and teach your son how to make grilled cheese. It's who loves you before there's anything to gain. That was never Diane. That was Cora. That was Marcus. That was the family I built when the one I came from decided I no longer counted. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this: your value is not created by the numbers attached to your name, not your salary, not your house, not your stock price. The people who only find their way back once your life looks expensive were never confused about your worth. They just thought they could profit from it later. They were wrong.